Hi guys, it's Kelly Ledival here and I'm back with another video for Honeybee Stamps. So today we are going to be working with these beautiful winter anemones. I love this stamp set as soon as I got it. You know I love flowers. Doesn't matter what season it is. But then there's a lot of other stuff I'm going to be working with too. So I'm working with the rectangle trio die, the polka dot background stencil, which is interesting because there's actually 4 stencils in that pack. So they're 4 different size polka dots. The Fa La La set, so the stamps and the dies, and then the winter anemones stamps and dies. So lots of products because it's not a 1-layer card. I know. Yeah, I just had this, I thought it would be cute. I had this idea for these little rectangle windows, which had I prepared better, totally would have made this a shaker because this is perfect to do that, to have like the 3 separate windows as little shakers. But I didn't do that. So if you have it or pick up the die, maybe try that because I think it'd be super cute. So I cut this out of Nina Solar White cardstock, the 80 pound. That's what I'm using for everything. And then I wanted there to be like a cute little background behind it. So that's what I'm doing here with the Distress Oxides. Don't mind me, I'm trying to find trying to grab this card so I can see it. Sometimes I find it easier to talk about them if I can see the final product. Anybody else ever do that with voiceovers? So I put down a super light layer of antique linen Distress Oxide with my ink blender. And then the way that I do my stencils, you guys have probably seen me do this before, is Tombow Mono Multi Glue is repositionable after it dries. So I always put this on the back of all of my stencils, and then that way I don't have to worry about taping them down. I don't have to worry about them moving. It is a little bit time consuming depending upon how intricate the stencil is, but I've always found it to be worth it. And then I always just like tap it on my hands a couple of times after it's dry. It probably will still leave sticky on your paper, but I always pull mine up with an eraser and it's never been an issue. Don't do it with your fingers because you naturally have like dirt, makeup, things like that, and you'll mark up your card. But anyway, once I got the stencil down, then I put down a much heavier layer of the antique linen. I didn't want the background to be like in your face. I wanted it to kind of be like subtle. So I decided to do the tone on tone. And then what is that? Gathered twigs? Is that what I used? I think so. You know, I always link all of my products, right? Because I can't remember. Yeah, good. Glad we're on the same page. So for the darker brown, I just wanted to put that around the edges because of the way the windows cut. The section in the middle won't have any of this on it, but that's okay. I'm just kind of, I was trying to create a little bit of interest and variation. So some of the polka dots you would be able to see better. Some of them you'd be able to see a little bit less. When I was dumping my water for my Perfect Pearls I just used a little water bottle cap. I totally over poured it and it like dumped everywhere. So my intention was not to put water spatters in the background, but that's what happened. So it is what it is because it already got on there. So I just decided to embrace it because sometimes that's life. So I'm using the gold Perfect Pearls here, which unless you're holding your project in a particular, well, I guess regular Perfect Pearls is like that too. Like unless you catch it in a particular light, it's super subtle and once it dries and it just has the sheen. So I really liked that for the background because then depending upon which way you hold the card, it'll look just like regular polka dots or it'll have this little bit of shimmer, which you know I love. In order to decide what flowers I was going to be coloring, I laid down the die cut so that I could just lay the stamps out on top of it so I could make a good decision about where I wanted the flowers to go. This ended up, at the end of it, I ended up changing it anyway. But nonetheless, it's giving us a jumping off point, which is really all you need. Because once you get rolling, then you can adjust, or adapt as necessary. I don't know how to say this ink name. Let's be honest with each other. I'm trying it for the first time. I had bought it quite some time ago. It's the Gina K Amalgam? Amalgam? Dude, you know what I'm saying. I linked it. Okay? Cut a sister a break. But anyway, it is supposed to be fade resistant and waterproof, drying quickly. You can use with alcohol markers, and has a crisp, smooth color. I have heard so just wonderful, amazing things about this. And so I had picked it up so I could try it, and turns out everybody's right. It's really good. So yeah, super happy with that ink. I am okay. So this is normal. This is my go-to red. Okay, we're gonna talk a little bit about Copic colors here. So my go-to red is more of a peach. It's more of like a peachy pink red. But when I looked up, because you guys know when I'm coloring something, I like to Google the images and see what colors they come in. And so when I Googled anemones, which I have to think about before I say, by the way, they were more like a tomato red. And I think oftentimes we hear people talking about that and doesn't really know what that means. So I'm going to show you the difference. So this one that we just did is the one that's my go-to. It's more of that, what they call a cool red. So it has like more of the blue tones in it. This one that we're doing now is the more tomato red. So it's definitely on the warmer side versus the cooler side. This is not my go-to, but I wanted to show you the difference. So it just depends on what your preference is. Now, so you can see the one on the right almost looks orange compared to the one on the left, but they're both actually red. I'm going to be using the tomatoey red, the warmer red, for my flowers, since that's what it looked like on the screen. So this is the color combination that I came up with. It's mostly the R20 family, but I really wanted something that was going to have that warm feel, so I went with an R05. That's just because there's so many options in Copics. You don't have to buy them all. We've had this conversation before. You don't have to buy them all. You can mix and match them. And so for this one, I only showed you up to the R29. I'm going to go back in and add the R59 because it just didn't have enough contrast for me personally. But you can see just changing out the two, like the lightest color and the mid-tone, does change the entire way that the color combination looks. So if you guys have been here before and you've watched my flower coloring, you know I like to color from the base of the petal out toward the middle and then from the tip of the petal in toward the middle. And that just gives them a more rounded appearance. So they look kind of like they're opening up from their middle section. And then I'm going to do the same thing that I always do. Lightest to darkest, darkest to lightest. I'm using the flicking technique. And then because I personally am heavy-handed, I leave a lot of white in the middle the first time I go through. And then when I come back, I end up filling in that gap much more. So I'm only going to show you this one flower, and then I'm going to show you how I shade the ones that are cupped, just to where to lay the shadows at. It's just things like this are really like coloring wise time consuming, and because this isn't a one layer card, and you know it takes me 100 years to make something that's not a one layer card. It's really I do like the way it turned out in the end, even though it is different for me, because different's good. Different doesn't mean bad. Different just means different. That's what I tell my son all the time, like when he talks about like people who I come from a Ford family, so that's just all of my grandfather retired from Ford. Both my uncles worked there. My grandmother worked there. My mom retired from there. So just Ford family. So when Peanut sees something that's not a Ford, he will make comments about how like they're driving a Dodge or a Chevy or whatever. And so I will tell him like different doesn't mean bad. Different just means different. And you know, to try and not look at it as something that just because that isn't what what our family drives or owns or whatever, any of the things, that doesn't mean somebody's less than. So we're trying to drill that into his head, because there's so much love of the Ford in his life. He picks up on that pretty easily. So now we're back, we're working in reverse, starting to kind of fill in this flower. I still do like to leave a little bit of white. I feel like it adds to the highlights. The more white you leave in the middle, the more rounded, how do I want to word this? The more rounded it's going to look, because it's going to give you a very strong highlight. I could have stopped here, like you can see where there's all of that white and it looks very dimensional, but I wanted mine to be a little bit more solid. So when I am done with this one, I'm still going to go back in and put in the lightest color. And then because the way that these anemones are drawn, there's lots of petals that kind of fold over each other. And for those folded edges, I just filled them in solid with the lightest color. But then you'll see here, like, make sure you take a good look at it, because I didn't feel like there was enough dimension. Now, that's just a personal thing for me. So I did decide, like, I looked at it for a minute, colored it up, and then I looked at it and I was like, no, we need some more depth in there. I just felt like I needed a darker color. And the R59, even though it is more on the, like, the maroon or pinkish side, it will still blend really well into here, because it's not a far cry from the R29. I know the Copic numbering system can be really, really confusing. And then they sell them in sets. So, like, you guys can buy sets, and you know how I feel about sets. Don't buy the sets. Unless they're, like, the 3 color sets aren't bad, but, like, the big ones, the 72 and stuff like that, those sets aren't made to blend together. And the reason you buy Copics is because of their blending properties, let's be honest. So yeah, just adding that little bit of dark, and I didn't add a ton, just a little bit, really, for me, made the flower what it is. And then I just blended that back out with the R29. So, what do you guys, are you typically, like, poinsettia people? Because I know anemones are a Christmas flower, but I've only ever seen poinsettias. That was just, like, that was all that we ever had, like, in our house as gifts. Like, not like we ever kept them as plants, because, let's be honest, we would have murdered it in my household. I'm very envious of people who can keep things alive. Like, I'm outside of my child, pretty much that's all I've got. I'm not good at the remembering to take care of them. My girlfriend Angie sent me succulents for my birthday, and the only reason those are still surviving is because you have to water them, like, one time. They're like a cacti. Cactus? Cacti plural. Cactus. They're like a cactus. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so for the shading on these other ones that are cupped, I'm just showing you very quickly where I'm going to put the shading. I'm not going to color all of the flowers on the video. It's already long. So the way, when it's cupped, you want the shadows to be definitely on the inside bottom, and then on the outside edge bottom. So those are all covered up with color, right? Why can't I talk today? What is going on? I'm not really sure why speaking has become so difficult, but it's a struggle today for some reason. These leaves, Google's my friend. I remember, like, back in the day when I had to do, like, research papers and stuff like that, like, I had to write one, I don't know, it was like in 4th grade or something, on another country, and then we all dressed up like the people. I picked Holland. Yeah, I don't know why. So where was I why was I even bringing that up? I don't even know. Anywho, Googled the flower images, and then that showed me the leaves as well, which do tend to more of the yellow-green side. So that's what I picked, but my darkest color is a G28, because it does need some sort of contrast. I also wanted them to have a little bit of texture, so I did fill in the leaf completely with the light green. Don't worry, I'm going to color another one. I filled it in completely with the light green. And then from there, I started adding just little flicks and lines from the inside out. But where those points are drawn, like where they're indented, I also added a little bit of shading there from the outside in to make them a little bit more dimensional and, like, extend that line. I guess is the best way to explain it. So to extend that line towards the inside of the leaf to give them some more dimension. And then I'm really just doing little lines of color to give them a multicolored appearance. And I chose not to go back over it with the lightest color because I didn't want to blend out all of the detail that I put in. Speaking of detail, you guys know how this works. I'm using my white gel pen just to highlight the stamen on the flowers because they are darker. Does kind of get lost in the middle, and this is something that you can do to kind of bring them forward. And then even though I have used Gina K's ink, and I stamped them twice, because, well, I usually do, I'm still going to outline them. It's just something that's a personal preference thing. Don't feel like you have to do that. It's just, for me, I like the way that it looks with a bold black outline. Once all that's done, and please do that before you do any of your die cutting, otherwise you're going to be chasing those things all around your desk. It's miserable. I'm going to die cut all of these out. I know, I'm die cutting. Okay, look at me branching out. Aren't you proud of me? I'm so proud of me. Because I thought it would be, I could have fussy cut them. They aren't bad. Like the shapes aren't bad. They would have been super easy to fussy cut. I decided to use the dies anyway, to help kind of break it up from the background. So just going to line these up and run them through. And then I also, while I was busy doing the die cutting, the fa la la. Does anybody else sing that in their head? Like, I sing it. Like, whenever I have to say it, like name the stamp set, in my head, I'm like, la 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 la. Yeah, I can't help it. But anyway, the fa la la set has stamps that also coordinate, or dies that coordinate with stamps. And so I used the Mary die. And the last time I did this with a very intricate die where I stacked them on top of each other, I found it was much easier to glue down part of it in the beginning and then go back in and glue down the rest of it, especially with the super intricate ones. It keeps me from having to slide them around together and decreases the chance that they're going to tear because they are so fine, which is great because this is a beautiful script. And it's just, I don't know, for me, that just works better. So I put all those together. There was only 3. And then I'm going to heat emboss the Christmas part of it. It's been a hot minute since I've done this with my, for my sentiments. I used to do it all the time. I probably will still continue to use it periodically, but it's been a hot minute since I've done it here, since I've been doing so many 1-layer cards. So make sure you're using your, whatever your embossing tool is, like the powder tool, because you don't want embossing powder where you don't want it. You know what I'm saying? You don't want it to go where you don't want it to go. So did that, stamped it in Versamark, and I'm using white Simon's to stamp embossing powder to make that show up, and then I'm going to trim it into a label. From here, we're going to actually start building the card. So I knew I wanted the rectangle part of it to be popped up, the little frame part. I thought that would be cute and just add a little bit more interest. And this is where I was like, I should have made this a shaker card. Like, I should have, but I don't have any acetate on hand. So I did not, but it would be so cute that way. So I put the Scotch foam tape on the back of that and building the card. And then I always like to, especially when I'm doing any sort of floral arrangement, I like to put Tombow Mono multi-glue on the back of my images. That's why you see them all flipped over on the other side. You'll also see me put glue on them here in just a few seconds. And that just holds them down and like kind of tacks them in place so I can figure out where I want them. Now, we talk all the time about design rules, right? Like working in odd numbers and creating a visual triangle with your colors using the gallon pint quart trick. So there's a lot of different design elements or design like guidelines that you can use to help you. However, sometimes those are made to be broken, particularly when you just don't like the way it looks. Like I right here, I've got the gallon pint quart thing going on. Okay, I got my red is going to be my gallon. My pint is going to be is going to be the background, and then the green. So I have the color scheme going on, and then your neutrals typically don't count. But so putting those down, and then once I have the leaves where I want them, I'm just going to remove the flowers from on top of them. So that way I can just hold it with one finger and lay some glue down so that they don't move and they're actually adhered to the card. But using that little sticky glue trick is super helpful in getting the placement, not having to chase them all over the place when they won't stay where you want to put them. But so on top of that, then I'm trying to create that visual triangle with the images that are there. And being adaptable is super important in life, period. But especially with card making, there's a lot of times, and I saw it a lot in the class that I recently taught, where people get discouraged. Like mine's not going to look as good as yours, or mine looks different. And again, let me reiterate, different means different. Different doesn't mean bad. But sometimes you have to do your own thing. Okay. Sometimes you got to break out the box. And for me, as I was putting this together, I realized that I did not like, the triangle that was being created by the flowers that I'm putting down, which by the way, you could see in some areas I'm having to, put a foam tape underneath it so that they're flush with the top layer, gluing the sentiment down, flat, because the Mary, has a couple of layers to it. So I didn't, want to risk trying to put the Christmas over the Mary. You know what I'm saying? But so when I was doing this and building the whole thing, I looked at it and I was like, I don't love it. I don't like the way that it looks. But I've obeyed all of the rules up until this point. My sentiments, in the third, the rule of thirds, it's in the bottom right hand third. I've got the three elements for the flowers and the background, all of this stuff. All those things are good things. I didn't like it. That's just what it came down to. I didn't like it. I added some gold sequins, just to kind of fill in that space and bring more attention to the sentiment, which I really like. I love the little gold sequins on there, but it left the left-hand side of the card looking pretty scarce, between adding the sentiment on the right and then the sequins, which I really need to get some like gems. I need to get some of those. I think I should shop these on Black Friday sales. Speaking of Black Friday sales, I haven't even mentioned this. Today is the last day for the Honeybee Stamps Black Friday deal. It's 20% off. And then if you're watching on YouTube, I'll put the link to the store below with the coupon code. And they don't just sell like their own brand of stamps. They also sell other craft items like glue and things like that. So you can get yourself a pretty decent deal with 20% off. But anyway, so breaking this rule, I just did it. Okay, so I'm supposed to have 3. I don't have 3. Now I have 4 because the left-hand side just looked so empty. I decided I was going to cut and color another flower. And then I just moved the leaf that I had that was sitting there before. I colored another leaf. I thought I was going to need it, but I turned out not needing it, and that's totally fine. So don't forget to head over to the store before midnight if you want to get any deals on the Honeybee stamps, and that includes your entire order, 20% off. So that's kind of awesome. I'm adding some clear wink of Stella to just the parts of the flower that are kind of rolled over, and then I also added it to the Mary and the center of the flowers. I know we really didn't have story time today, and I apologize, but hopefully you were entertained nonetheless. And that's it. That's the whole card. So thank you guys so much for joining me, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.